Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for joining this live stream. In this channel, I'd like to talk about how there's an increasing number of people, even in upper middle management or even senior management for that matter, who, because of the gender and race quotas and just waving through people of very low IQ, who normally would have been weeded out in junior high school in the real world, these people are being waved through the entire education system and also waved through Western corporate businesses. And so now they're occupying, in fact, they're in the majority, I would argue, they're occupying some fairly senior managerial and supervisory positions. So I'll talk about a meeting that a little while ago I attended, and this will sort of illustrate the point. And for obvious reason, I'm not going to use names, but there were, this is a matter that had to be decided. So this was the meeting to decide a particular matter, and there'd been a lot of correspondence and phone calls and earlier meetings that had gone on with various participants who were involved in the whole thing. And these people are now at the meeting. The meeting is to now make the final decision. So there were 5 people in the room, of which I was one. And then there was the most senior officer in the room was a woman in her late 30s, early 40s perhaps, and very nervous, looked like she was on Prozac or something. There was a guy there, probably white guy, but probably gay, also very nervous, seemed like he was on some sort of medication. He seemed all over the place. There was a brown gay guy, and there was just a normal straight white guy. Now, out of all the people in the room, bear in mind they've all been involved in this matter and for some months, so it's not like it was suddenly foisted upon them or something. Far from it. They had a lot of input over, or had a lot of involvement, or the opportunity to be involved over the period of months previous. So as far as I was concerned, this meeting was, okay, we're getting together, we all know what's going on, we all understand the issues, we're now here to make a decision, or so I thought. Now, this is the effect. This is the real on the ground practical effect of people getting waved through who don't know what the fuck they're doing. They neither care nor have the ability to deal with these issues. Now, the pay range of the people in the room was, say, 150 to, say, low 200,000s per annum. So for that, you can get pretty good people. I mean, that's the top 15% or something of wages there. So you can get at least the top 15% of people in terms of academic performance, intellectual capacity, experience, ability, the capacity to apply their knowledge and that sort of thing. But the only guy in the room who seemed to fit that bill, funnily enough, was the straight white guy. Wow, big surprise there. And he came to the meeting prepared. He knew what he was talking about. He understood the issues on the table. And he was actually replaced someone else. So if anyone had an excuse to not be across it, it would have been him. But for the others in the room, they seemed to have no idea or comprehension of what was going on. They talked as if it was talk from some script that had nothing to do with what we were supposed to be meeting there to talk about. The woman who was in effect the senior officer in the room, really. She seemed to just stare blankly at things, didn't really seem to understand, didn't seem to care that she didn't understand, didn't seem to think it was something that she needed even to understand. When one of the others was talking, they mispronounced her name, only a minor mispronunciation, which hardly anyone worried about. She jumped on it like some sort of jungle predator, bang, straight onto the guy, and gave him a good sort of, but it really told him off for mispronouncing her name. It was a minor mispronunciation of one vowel. So again, normal person will just let that through. I mean, she's about 40 years old, but she behaved like some really super uptight schoolgirl, and I was sort of surprised by that. why would you have someone in that state, such a fragile state, in that sort of relatively senior supervisory post? The brown gay guy again didn't seem to understand what was going on. Didn't seem to care that he didn't understand. Didn't seem to think he had any responsibility to try and understand or master the subject. And he came out with sort of slogans and platitudes and inappropriate proverbs, but other than just talking nonsense and gibberish, he didn't seem to contribute. And the other guy was, again, he just talked from a script. He had no real comprehension of what was going on and just kept repeating the script over and over, indicating that, again, he had no intention of coming to terms with the issues, nor had he, even though they'd all had months to prepare. So this made the meeting, as you imagine, sort of a little difficult, and it went on for a couple of hours and really just went round in circles. Again, people repeating the scripts, but they all had a very narrow grasp of not simply the issues that were there, but just a narrow grasp of what appeared to be, as I understood, at least their job description. They had the power to say no to things that they didn't understand, and that, which is pretty much everything. So I can't imagine they'd have approved very much, as to approve something would have meant taking responsibility and understanding what they're approving, and they didn't seem to want to do that or care about it. So when it's harder to assess when you've got very brief meetings with people where you're exchanging quick phone calls, emails, that sort of thing. It's much harder to assess the depth of their capacity to understand an issue. And this wasn't a complicated issue, by the way, but they all behaved, in my view at least, like trainees, like juniors, like people who were just sort of starting out. They just didn't seem to know what they were doing. Now, according to if you look at the, after I was so horrified by this that well, no, actually I wasn't. I'd come across it quite a few times. So I was probably more disappointed in how far we've come, how far we've slid down the ladder in terms of Western inability now to put competent, capable people in these roles, because they're sitting, these people who haven't got a fucking clue what they're doing, they're sitting in these roles, but they're taking the place of people who could do a good job. That's really the bigger rub for me, because they're replacing much more competent people, and this is a waste of money for everybody. It's lower standards of living for everybody. It achieves nothing. It's a net loss to the entire community. Now this business has a lot of very cozy government contracts, so that's really how they're able to get away with it in commercial terms. But nonetheless, in the areas where they do have exposure to market competition, they're not doing so good, which is understandable given the caliber of people they're putting in these roles. So anyway, when the meeting broke up, I sort of went off and I was having a look at the profiles of these people which are online, and I was having a look, and just the lady as an example. In this area that she's employed in, she's got a degree and a master's from a middleweight university. It's not like a fourth tier or something. It's a recognised educational institution of some repute. Not one of the top tier, but certainly next tier down maybe. And got a master's there as well, and then has 15 or 16 years experience in this particular area. Now, I don't know how somebody could be that well qualified, on paper at least, and have that much experience, and also at the same time have not even the remotest fucking clue about what she's doing or what's going on or understanding. Now, here's sort of some of the price we pay for affirmative action and quotas. I don't think this woman could have passed through junior high school. I think she would have flunked out of school at 15. Just doesn't have the intellect, doesn't give a shit, got no drive, doesn't care. So she's She's been put through senior high school, waved through because she's not a straight white male, then got gifted a place at university, and then in the real world, she wouldn't have made it early, let alone senior high school. Has been gifted a degree, then gifted a master's as well, which is almost a joke given her intellectual capacity, and the fact that the biggest concern she had in the entire meeting was whether or not her one of the vowels in her name was pronounced correctly. Then and has just sort of somehow just and probably can turn up for meetings just talking platitudes and proverbs and that sort of thing. And maybe she's good at filling out reports. But in terms of understanding the issues, and she just wasn't there. It wasn't even on the same planet. She just wasn't there. It wasn't even on the same planet, let alone the same page. So here's the price you pay now from her perspective. We switch around to her perspective. She said, well, why should I work hard? Why should I get stressed? Why should I attempt to understand what's going on around me? Given I've never needed to. I've never needed to. I just keep getting waved on, and now I'm on a job paying $160,000, $170,000 a year. When in reality, she's probably worth $40,000 in the real world. So she's getting waved through. So she would say, well, why do I stress and bother about this? Why should I go out my way? Why should I try hard? Why should I apply myself? Why should I try and understand these issues, be they complicated or not? So from her perspective, there's no mileage in it. Why do it? Things are working very nicely for her as they are, in doing nothing, just sitting there passively and letting the culture of affirmative action just keep on raising the water level and the boat that she's sitting in. So, and the same goes for really the other people in the room, the brown gay guy, and that's so. I mean, part of his role was understanding finance. Now, I think the guy could count to 10, for Christ's sake. It was that bad. In the meeting, they would issue these sort of proclamations and said with all sorts of defiance and even a bit of a thump on the table side. When they're asked to define it or explain it, or they can't. They look at each other and bank expressions all around. So these are the sort of people who are in these roles. Now, if they work to me, for example, in my business, I would categorize, given that level of expertise and understanding and knowledge, I would rate them as trainees. I wouldn't let them anywhere near a potential decision because they're just not up to it. They'd have to really do a lot more work to be prepared and able to contribute and add some value to things going on. And that's really the material point. They just can't add any value because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're just getting waved through. But it's telling that the white male. So it goes to show that straight white males still see, on balance, not every single one of them, they're outliers, obviously, still see their role is to understand what's happening, to master the subject, make some sort of value-add contribution to the conversation, discussion. A subject that's been talked about for a while that we know that we're meeting to actually make the big decision. To turn up for a meeting like that, not knowing what I was doing, not knowing what was going on, not understanding what was on the table to be to be decided upon, would be the height of embarrassment for me. I just couldn't do it. The embarrassment I'd feel. That so I'd make damn sure at the next meeting when I turned up, I knew it all, chapter and verse, and then would take the position that's my duty, not simply to myself, but to the other people in the room to know what I'm talking about, so we can make the decision, so I'm not wasting their time, or in some way letting them down by not making a worthwhile contribution, or such is my view. But they don't have that view. They have no responsibility to make the meeting work or to they have no responsibility to the other people there. In fact, quite the opposite. They're more focused on avoiding all responsibility and trying to avoid having to make a contribution to the other people there. In fact, quite the opposite. They're more focused on avoiding all responsibility and trying to avoid having to make a contribution because it's too much or they can't be bothered and so on. So this gives you a sort of a window into seeing the practical effects on the ground of these sort of people being in these sort of roles and the cost and the price we all pay all of us pay from this affirmative action, wave them through madness. These people wouldn't get out of the takeout chicken shop in the real world, but now they're sitting there on reasonably well paid. I mean, 160,000 a year is not a vast sum of money, but gee, it's all right. Yeah, you can get pretty good people for that. So and we've got not substandard but substandard people filling these roles, and they don't need to. And it's something that is a wealthy Western society that has been, very good at creating wealth and building wealth. We're losing all of that now by these dumb, stupid affirmative action, gender and race quotas.